So yesterday you heard a lot about digital resilience, and what basically that means in simple terms is protecting your organization against any kind of risk that you might have digitally. Now, here's the challenge that we've had with this, and let me actually explain this in a little bit more detail because the next session that you're going to see is going to be really interesting. The challenge we've had is, imagine your airline system has a system outage. One of the challenges that we have as IT practitioners is you don't really know where the challenge lies. And the way that the industry operates is it's very siloed. So do you have a challenge because there was a security breach? Do you have a challenge because your network went down? Do you have a challenge because your unowned network had some issue? Do you have a challenge because there was an API overload and there was an application issue? It's very hard to tell. And that's because the entire industry has provided data to you in silos. What we're trying to do is make sure that we can actually pull all of these pieces together effectively so that you can correlate the data and actually glean the insight that tells you exactly what the problem is and pinpoint that problem, but more so than pinpointing just the problem, figure out what the response and remediation needs to be for that problem. And that's digital resilience, right? And to talk more about that, I want to bring up two experts. So Tom Gillis, who's our SVP of Security. That's right, there was one person who was going to clap. Can we give it up for Tom Gillis? There you go. So Tom Gillis, who's our SVP of Security, is going to come up and talk a little bit more in detail about this. And then he's going to be joined by Tom Casey from Splunk. And we're going to talk about how digital resilience can happen across networking, security, observability, with a common set of data. So with that, without further ado, Tom Gillis, my friend, come on up.
Great. Thanks, G2. And hello, everyone. I'm Tom Gillis. I am the general manager for the security products here at Cisco. So Vegas, we got 3 Toms this morning. We'll run a survey in the afternoon. Let you pick your favorite Tom after the show. You know, obviously, hoping. We'll see how it goes. So I'm going to talk more about digital resilience. And you heard from Chuck, you heard from Gary, G2, how data makes the difference. So I'm going to make the argument this morning that the combination of Cisco plus Splunk can unlock a class of data that today is invisible to security analytics, but it's data that is essential for identifying the lateral movement of an attack, and it's really going to transform your overall digital resilience strategy. So let's start by thinking about what data goes into a SIEM like Splunk today. So many sources of data, log data from all different systems, but generally firewall logs are the largest source of data. I talk to customers where they'll say 50% of their total ingest bill is coming from firewall logs. So despite that big investment in harvesting all that data, it can be very difficult to get value from firewall logs because firewall logs are an approximation of what's happening in the network. So it's relatively low fidelity data. So let's take a minute and think about what's happening in the network security industry. It's going through pretty significant transformation. So network security used to be services that came in a box. And that box would live at the edge of the network in the DMZ. But deperimeterization, the melting of that perimeter, is well underway. So we're taking those services, defining them as software, and then breaking up into little pieces. And so if you think about the services that protect a user, we're putting those close to the user wherever the user may be. We want to be milliseconds away from a user. And that means we're in maybe 100, maybe 200 locations around the internet. And this is a well-understood movement. We do it, our competitors do it. It's called SASE, Secure Access Services Edge. But what's maybe less obvious is there's a similar revolution happening for the services that protect an application that may be running in a private cloud, maybe running in a public cloud. And here we want to take the services, break them up into pieces, but it's not hundreds of pieces. It's hundreds of thousands of pieces. Every Kubernetes cluster gets its own little miniature network security stack. Every VM, every edge computing workload. How many of those do you have in your environment? Hundreds of thousands. You could have 1 million of these things. So with a distributed system of this scale, we can create very fine-grained, very precise security controls, but we're also going to unlock east-west or internal data in a way that has not been possible before. It's not hypothetical. This is a product we announced in April. It's called Cisco Hypershield. So I'm going to talk about Hypershield and how Hypershield as a product can help you achieve digital resilience, but how Hypershield is going to allow the combination of Hypershield plus Splunk to unlock this east-west data in a really powerful and almost magical way. So there are 3 things that Hypershield does. G2 touched on this yesterday. I'll go through and talk about how these things are going to impact your digital resilience, and then we'll relate that to the data problem. So the first is segmentation. Segmentation is a foundational part of any digital resilience strategy. But segmentation can be hard to do, because when you look at the behavior of an application, it can look kind of random, right? It can look like a big jumble of spaghetti. This is talking to that, it's talking to this, talking to this. And so with Hypershield, we have the ability to combine 2 breakthrough technologies. The first is eBPF. G2 talked about this yesterday, right? Kernel level visibility. It lets us look in and understand all the little piece parts of your application, couple that with AI, and we create a continuous learning and understanding of the application to generate a dynamic set of segmentation policies. So we emulate almost what a human would do. So let's start by separating dev from prod. That's obvious. As the system gains confidence in individual policies, it makes tighter and tighter and tighter policies. If the application change gets updated, it relaxes those policies, relearns, and then tightens up again. So it's a living, breathing, dynamic system. I got a good news, bad news situation here. The good news is we can deliver the segmentation for you at scale without taking a giant amount of headcount. That's the good news. Okay? Bad news is attackers are assuming you've already done that. They assume you have segmentation in place. And so they've gotten very, very good at either stealing a credential or compromising known vulnerabilities in your application, so they move through legitimate application pathways. And this is a really big problem, because you have a lot of vulnerabilities in your infrastructure. For folks in this room, the typical enterprise scale, you might have 500, you might have 1,000 vulnerabilities every single week. And G2 referred to this yesterday. Attackers are getting really, really good at taking advantage of these vulnerabilities. It used to take weeks, then it was days, now it's hours. Hours. We see a vulnerability gets announced and we see it being weaponized. So it is simply not reasonable to patch 500 or 1,000 vulnerabilities every single day. It's just not reasonable. With Hypershield, we take a really, really interesting approach. So we take the output of your vulnerability scanners and we'll produce a report. And we'll show you, look, you've got 20,000 or 2,000, depending on your scale, Apache servers in your infrastructure. But there's 100 Apache servers that have this new vulnerability. I'm going to call it log5j. Don't worry, it's not a real vulnerability, so relax, it's theoretical. So new vulnerability, log5j. You can hand this report to your colleagues on the app side and say, app team, we need to go patch this vulnerability. But while you do, we can automatically deploy a compensating control somewhere in this distributed system. This compensating control is a shield. It protects the vulnerability from being exploited. This is going to revolutionize digital resilience, because your applications have tons and tons of holes. And we're creating a very autonomous way of plugging those holes. So that's going to be a leap forward in digital resilience. But that's not the most interesting part, in my opinion. The most interesting part is that this Hypershield architecture can also protect itself. So we've implemented what we call a dual data path. Everywhere we put one of those little tiny baby network security stacks, we actually put 2. There's a digital twin. So let's think about the software upgrade problem. When you're running version 2.0, we call that the primary data path. When 2.1 comes out, we load that into the shadow data path. It's a full packet processing pipeline. Not in the lab, not in a little of your environment, in all of your environment. And all of those 100,000 locations, we're running live traffic on the new software build 2.1 in parallel with 2.0. And there's a local AI engine that's comparing the two and saying, does this look the same? And after a few days, it says, yes, these look the same. We migrate flows onto 2.1. Now it's the primary. 2.0 is the shadow. We look at that for a few days. AI engine says it's still the same. We load 2.2. So this upgrades itself. Now, the same architecture can be used to validate policy changes. Anybody have an issue with a firewall where you make a change and you think you got it, and all of a sudden the CEO can't get their email anymore? Ever had that happen? Right? So being able to push these changes into the shadow data path and test, is this having the intended effect that I want? This is, I believe, transformational. This is digital resilience. So we're talking about a network security solution that writes its own rules, tests its own rules, deploys its own rules, lifecycle manages its own rules, and then magically upgrades itself while you sleep. So this product is going to bring digital resilience to a whole new level, but it's also going to be able to unlock the visibility into that east-west traffic that today, up to now, that traffic has really been out of reach. So Hypershield is a fabric, not a fence, which means it lives in lots of little places. It can live in the operating system using eBPF. It can live in a virtual appliance. It can live in a server with a hardware acceleration, a DPU. And we announced yesterday we have AMD DPUs in the Cisco UCS C-Series chassis. These are available. It can live in the future in a switch or a router with a DPU. So hundreds of thousands of enforcement points. It allows us to see all of the inner workings of an application. So if you think about how you observe an application, when a user goes to click on a link, that's one click. But behind the application, there are all these microservices where there might be 10 or 20 API calls. That's what we call east-west traffic. And it's that traffic that attackers are hiding in to move laterally. That's the stuff we've got to understand. We want to be able to look at all of the microservices, all of the components that make up the application. That is at least an order of magnitude more data than we're looking at today, so 10x. But that's one of 3 compounding factors, okay? The second factor is that the language that network security uses to understand network traffic, IP port and protocol, that's not that useful for security analytics. What we really want to try to figure out is where's this coming from, where's this going to, and what does it look like? And so to really understand this, you need to understand process and packet level detail. And this is something that Cisco does today. And we do this quite uniquely. So with Cisco Secure Client, that's the basis of our SSE solution, every connection coming off a laptop, we can look at what process initiated that connection. That's unbelievably interesting data, and we see that in real time. And on the other end of the wire, with our acquisition of Isovalent, we have a product called Cilium that has the same insight and visibility into a server. So now we can see end-to-end what a transaction looks like. Let's imagine it's Tom, I'm on a Cisco managed device, and I want to connect to source code repository, but the process that's initiating that connection spawned out of Spotify. Does that seem weird? Why would a Spotify need to connect to an Apache server that's in our source? Wait a minute, right? That doesn't make any sense. So if you have that level of visibility, these attacks stick out like a sore thumb. But we talked about a 10x increase in east-west traffic. Now adding that process and packet level visibility, it's another order of magnitude, 100x. There's a third compounding factor, and this is one that's well understood and well underway. Applications no longer live in the private or the public cloud. They live everywhere, right? IoT, edge computing, all around. A conference room has a little application. It's got an operating system. So to really understand east-west traffic, we've got to look at all of that. That's another order of magnitude. So we're talking about 3 orders of magnitude increase in data, 1,000x. This is data that Cisco has today, but it's not practical to access this data when it's 3 orders of magnitude larger. It kind of reminds me of a story my dad used to say to me, son, can't have everything, where would you put it? Okay, Dad, right? So, but we have this data, but we can't take the current approach of trying to ingest all that data. It's simply not economically feasible or practical. So what I think is the most interesting thing about the combination of Cisco and Splunk is software. And if we devolve that software into pieces, we think about the SIEM, the SOAR, the policy, all the context that Splunk has, separate from the analytics piece. And rather than moving all of that data to the analytics, what if we use Hypershield and its control plane to take the analytics and move it to the data? Let's break it up into little pieces and push it out into the fabric of the network. And this is why I say that understanding that east-west traffic, this is a problem that only Cisco and Splunk could solve together. And that's why this combination is so exciting. So to talk a little bit more about the impact that this will have from a Splunk perspective, I'd like to invite the second Tom to join the stage. Tom Casey, my colleague from Splunk, SVP and General Manager.
Hey, Tom. Thank you.
Tom.
It is my first Cisco Live, so I'm super excited to be here. This is great.
First Cisco Live, not first time in Vegas, right?
Never tell.
But we'll be here together next week for .conf.
That's right, for the Splunk User Conference as well, so a lot to cover.
Yeah, well, so his first Cisco Live. Can we give him a Cisco Live welcome? All right? Yeah.
Thank you for the cheap applause. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, as a little bit more, like I think 2 Toms are maybe better than 1 Tom. Anybody? Right? Well, we'll let you be the judge on that.
3 is outstanding.
Yeah, 3 Toms will be the third. So many of the folks in the room, maybe they're not so familiar with Splunk. Yeah. Can you give us an overview of what is Splunk? How does it work?
Yeah, I sure can. So Splunk helps power the SOC of the future for many of the largest enterprises in the world. Splunk Enterprise Security organizes the activities within the SOC so you can detect, investigate, and respond faster. Splunk SOAR helps to orchestrate and automate those activities so that you're more compliant and consistent with your company policies while being more efficient. Splunk Attack Analyzer automatically analyzes multi-vector attacks that are coming in through phishing campaigns and helps you reduce your response time to just minutes in dealing with those things. And then, Tom, just a couple weeks ago at RSA, we introduced Asset and Risk Intelligence.
Yes.
And Asset and Risk Intelligence does continuous discovery and monitoring of the assets in your environment. So you can get healthy, stay healthy, and be compliant.
Super powerful technology that I think is highly synergistic with what we've been doing at Cisco around identity intelligence, right?
Sure.
So pulling together that contextual understanding of the who, what, where, when, and how.
That's right. And we're building on a great foundation. As you know, Splunk's been a leader in security for some time. I am very proud to announce that Splunk has just been named a leader once again in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for Security Information and Event Management.
Clap for that.
10th consecutive year.
It really is a testament to the velocity of innovation that the Splunk team is delivering in security. So congrats to that. So when we think about innovation, you know, Tom and I spent a bunch of time looking at how do these pieces add up. And one of the probably the richest areas that we focus on is the combination of XDR and SIEM. And the way I think about it in really simple terms, an XDR solution, it's narrow but deep. We look at that process and packet level data, and we're trying to say, that looks funny, let's drive a response. So it's kind of a stovepipe solution, whereas Splunk is probably the closest thing to all-seeing and all-knowing that you're going to find in your environment, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, that's right. And you get a lot of that sort of real-time detection and capability with XDR. And one of the first things we got our teams working on is making it possible to take some of that signal, those incidents detected by XDR, and sending that into Splunk so that you can kind of get that longitudinal view, both horizontally, correlated to other things, and over time. We think that's powerful, but I think, Tom, you and I are also really excited, as you noted here, about going the other direction and taking some of that selective information that you get in the SIEM and using that to enrich those detections in XDR by sending it the other way.
Yes, that's the magic. It's bidirectional. So we talk about the right data, right? I made the case for packet level, process level data is going to enable new ways of seeing lateral movement. What's your view on the data?
Well, I mean, you know, data is a difference maker. We say that. Certainly, Splunk is already connected in many cases into hundreds and sometimes thousands of data sources in the enterprises that we serve. One of the things people like about Splunk is we take an opinionated view around OTel. Splunk and Cisco are top contributors there. And yet we also allow you to just ingest unstructured data. And you can ask it virtually any question with Splunk's schema on read
language. That really is magical.
Really powerful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then, Tom, like you were talking about, we have this ability to do just tremendous enrichment. You mentioned XDR, but there's also user, cloud, breach protection. As we take that signal and pull that in, we really do get a very broad and deep view.
It's the broad context. I agree. So we have access to the right data. We want to apply the right analytics. And I'll argue no one knows a network like Cisco. Right? We've spent decades understanding network patterns, looking for anomalies. And I think your results in the market, the Gartner MQ, reflect Splunk's analytics for security world class. We put those two things together, we're going to see some magical things.
Yeah, we are. But look, getting the right data and getting the right analytics in place is ultimately about taking the right actions and doing so quickly and effectively. And we're going to do some things to make that easier for you. We're going to focus on improving ease of use. We're going to enrich the Cisco AI Assistant and our applications with more AI and machine learning. That stuff is already underway. And then, Tom, when we look out into that future a little bit, you covered some of this already with Hypershield. I think we're really excited about the idea of potentially starting to take that orchestration in the SOC that multi-step orchestration, and begin to break pieces of that up and distribute it across the network.
Yeah, I think we're going to be able to do great things there. And here's an example. At Cisco with XDR, we started looking at, because we have that packet and process level data, we can see an attack happening in the very, very early stages, but it's low confidence, like much too early to block a connection. But when we see that funny looking process connecting to a server, we're like, we're not going to block it. Let's take a snapshot. And so we take a snapshot and then we watch. And if it turns out that's just a Windows update, well, we took a snapshot, we didn't bug any, we throw it away. But if it turns out that that's ransomware, right? We just automated the ransomware recovery process. And so we may have a situation where, yes, you had a ransomware infection, but you didn't actually get sick. So it's like a vaccine for ransomware. And as we did this on our own, we're like, oh, this is cool. We put that in the Splunk context. This becomes real, right? It becomes powerful.
Super powerful.
Yeah.
Ransomware, lateral movement problems, those sorts of things, being able to capture those at the point of first contact or ingress and isolate it there and contain it, that's a really powerful promise of the future.
So the combination of Cisco plus Splunk is going to allow us to see things that's going to drive security analytics that will create digital resilience. I think is going to really surprise people. But the security side is only half of the apple. The other is observability. So Tom, I'm going to hand the mic to you. You talk about observability. Thanks so much for everything.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Cheers. All right. If you want to learn more about where we're headed with security, go check out the security deep dive later this afternoon. Tom and team will give you an update there. Now, as I mentioned, data is the difference maker, and it really is. Splunk's industry-leading security and observability products are built on an increasingly unified data platform. And we do this because a shared data platform creates shared data context. You need to be able to investigate and respond to an issue regardless of where or how it emits its first signs, okay? Moreover, a shared data context allows us to connect engineering, IT operations, and security professionals together without a lot of the blame game and the back and forth. And that's critically important because in the real world, observability is hard. Now, in a prior life, I worked on the commerce platform for a Fortune 20 company. And see if this sounds familiar to many of your systems. Portions of the application, this was built over time, were a scale-up 3-tier architecture that we're running in our colo data centers. Portions of the application were these beautiful, perfect new cloud-native services that we had written on our own, and we had heavy dependencies on third-party payment providers through our gateway that we had to deal with. Real-world problems spread across my owned networks and parts of the environment I didn't have any control over. And that really brings us to the key of what we all need, which is full-stack observability into every layer of the stack. You have to be able to see into your owned and unknown networks. You've got to be able to work across your traditional scale-up applications on-premise and across your cloud-native applications, not just in one cloud, but increasingly in multiple clouds in your organization every day. And that is where full-stack observability from Cisco comes in. We offer best-in-class capabilities for everything from application performance management to digital experience monitoring so that you can see across your full network and across the public internet and what your CSPs are doing so that you can see across your traditional and cloud-native applications. And we give you the AIOps support and capability to be able to tie that all together in the business terms that matter to you. So how do we do this? Well, we start by taking the strength and foundation of Cisco's App Dynamics and its leadership in traditional application performance monitoring. It gives you great capabilities to go look into the cost and performance of your individual traditional applications. It helps you dig in and gain insight into network monitoring and to digital experience with deep integration with things like Thousand Eyes and Exedian. And then you add into that this capability from Splunk Observability Cloud, which is a leader in cloud-native application performance management. Brings in strength in infrastructure monitoring as well, and of course, strong integration with Splunk's leading log analytics platform. The combination is really powerful. And we layer on top of that Splunk IT Service Intelligence. And what ITSI does is it provides AIOps support for you, allowing you to get a single pane of glass and a view across all these different observability zones and technologies in a uniform and consistent way. Now, as we set about to go do our integration work together, we talked to you, our customers, And one of the things that you said you wanted from us was quick decisions, clarity around any decisions that affected product and technology roadmaps. And there is one change here in terms of how we talk about full stack observability this year versus last. We are no longer going to sell the Cisco Observability Platform product for cloud-native APM to net new customers. We are replacing it in the story directly with the Splunk Observability Cloud. And the great thing, and of course, we're going to be working with our customers and our partners directly to bring them along on this transition, make sure everybody has a good experience. But the important thing here in going forward is that we get the best-in-class capabilities of all of these products working in concert together. And that gives you industry-leading capabilities in every single one of these dimensions. And you've heard this refrain a couple times, but we really believe no other company can deliver the level of visibility into both the breadth and the depth of what you are doing with your systems and your networks and the environments that they're operating in that we can. Now, it's been just about 90 days since the close of the acquisition, and we have made some incredible progress so far. And that gives me the privilege and opportunity to share a few announcements with you, which I'm going to do in a hurry here today. First up, we want to make it easier for you to leverage the skills you already have in Cisco products and Splunk products. And so we're going to start by delivering a common look and feel, so it's easier for you to use the products together in a consistent way. We'll do that for AppDynamics and Splunk Observability Cloud, giving you a preview in the next 90 days. And then going further than that, we want to make it easy to log in and use all the products. So starting next month in July with a release update, we will make generally available common login. You will be able to use the same set of credentials to log into AppDynamics and the entire set of Splunk products as well. Moreover, we're going to add new functionality we call Log Observer Connect for AppDynamics. This mirrors functionality that exists today in the Splunk Observability Cloud. It allows you, from AppDynamics, to deep link directly into the Splunk logs, preserving the context of your current investigation, and get to that root cause detail stored in the events in the logs. That will be available in July as well. And then finally, we're also announcing the first set of integrations between AppDynamics and ITSI. In this case, we're taking alerts or rule violations from AppDynamics and pushing just that into Splunk ITSI to help give you a complete view. That's a lot of stuff. Let's take a look at how it works together to help you understand better what I'm talking about. I'm looking at a service map for a fictitious company that's a retailer. On the right, in the green, I see their store applications. These applications are being monitored by just Nagios feeds directly into a Splunk platform. They look pretty healthy right now. On the far left, down this path that is red, I've got some errors in my online commerce platform. That is a traditional scale-up three-tier application that's being monitored by AppDynamics. It's written at a different time and monitored in a different observability zone. And then down in the middle, where we see a little bit of yellow here as well, that's my new payment service that I've written. And that's being monitored by the Splunk Observability Cloud in a totally different observability domain. And yet, despite the fact that I have 3 different observability domains, and I have 3 different technologies deployed at different times, I'm getting a single unified view into all of this. And I'm able to step in and investigate any element of this hierarchy and stack. Hopefully. Whew, there we go. All right. So I'm able to drill into the payment service, and I can see the KPIs that are relevant to the payment service. But down at the bottom here, I can see I'm getting an alert. By clicking into that alert, I can get some detail. Now, that alert came from AppDynamics and was sent to ITSI. Drilling into that alert further, I can get helpful timeline views, or in this case, a root cause analysis view. Across the top here, I can take a look at my commerce service, and I can see that it is indeed showing some errors. But more importantly, down the stack, down the column, I can look at its call stack, and I can see that the order update service is experiencing intermittent errors. More importantly, just visually, I can look at this and notice it doesn't have the transaction volume I expect right now. So I'm going to drill in there. Here, I'm seeing that alert that came in from AppDynamics to ITSI, but more importantly, I can click this link right here, and I can open AppDynamics. When I do that, I deep link into AppDynamics in context. I'm seeing the original rule violation in AppDynamics, right? And now in App Dynamics, I can go take a look at the flow map for what's happening for the order update service. The order update service seems to be having troubles talking to my database, denoted with a red dot here. I have to look at the logs to monitor that thing. I can do that from here. I can say view related logs, and bam, I deep link right back into the Splunk platform. Yeah. Took a little bit for some people to catch up there, but imagine all the swivel chair work and multiple monitors, the phone a friend you would have to do to try to solve that problem on your own. With an integrated solution like this and that horizontal and depth view, you're able to address more of these problems on your own, and if you need to involve others, you can do that preserving the context as well. And if all that's exciting to you, it should also be exciting that every single bit of what I just showed you will be available for you to use, generally released in July. So we're really excited about that as well. Now, the teams have made quick progress. You asked us to innovate even as we're integrating the products, and we are doing that too. So I'm going to share a couple other quick announcements. In the area of AI, we'll be adding new skills to the Cisco AI Assistant for App Dynamics. This will help identify the workflows that kind of first responders should be performing based on their prior habits and that of their colleagues, shortening kind of training and action time, which is really valuable. Within ITSI, we're adding 2 new foundational AI capabilities. One, adaptive thresholding, so that instead of setting an alert that says, tell me when something's at more than 10% change in utilization in absolute terms, I can do it in relative terms, where it is relative to normal. And our machine learning will figure out what normal looks like at any point in time for you. Furthermore, it's also capable of looking at slowly changing dimensions in things like your KPIs that are hard for us as humans to see until we're already in a state that things are cascading to be problematic. Us taking care of that early gives you early analytics and notifications so you can take the right actions early as well. And then building on something else we talked about yesterday, this strong partnership with Microsoft, I am very pleased to announce the availability of our product lineup for observability and security on Azure. Yeah, I think that's somebody in the team who's been working on this for a while. So look, first up, we will make generally available in Q3 App Dynamics Classic SaaS version hosted and optimized natively to run on Azure. In that same time frame, we will offer Splunk Enterprise Security, ITSI, and Splunk Cloud, again, natively optimized to run on Azure as a preview in Q3 and generally available in all 3 theaters worldwide by the end of the calendar year. So a lot of exciting progress there. The goal is to make sure you can monitor everything across your multi-cloud environments, but you also retain choice about where you deploy and run our services as well. So I think we're making some good progress here on both integration and innovation. And we're going to pick up the pace and move faster ourselves so that you can too. I'm really proud of the progress that the team's made today and to date, and we are all grateful to you, our customers and our partners, for the feedback and guidance you're giving us on this integration and innovation journey. And so if you want to learn more about where we're headed with observability, go check out the Observability Keynote Deep Dive at 1 p.m. today. And now I'm going to hand the stage back over to Jeetu Patel, who's going to come up and share with you a little bit more about how Cisco is helping to connect everybody and make it easier to collaborate. Jeetu, my friend.
Tom.
Or should I call you Tom, too?
I have
Oh, you got one. Good.
I'm feeling a little left out. My dad should have named me Tom. So just before we get started on collaboration, just to summarize, what we talked about over there was the networking cloud, plus the security cloud, plus the observability cloud, plus the data cloud, all coming together in a way that actually provides you one end-to-end view